back to the Elder Law Out Loud podcast. I'm Carla Ray, a business development manager with Family First Firm, here with the CEO and founding attorney, Jeff Hotzen. Today, we're going to be talking about a unique offering that we have here at Family First Firm, really to help people plan for their entire lifespan and really thinking long term. This is sort of outside of the box of what any other law firm is doing.
That's right. Yeah, it's something that's new that we've created. It's called our Heirloom program. And basically, there's kind of two different sides to it. Ultimately, though, it's designed to take traditional estate planning, financial growth and advising, and the long-term care component and combine it all together in a plan that is really comprehensive for really everything that you'll run into as you age.
Because statistics show that everybody, almost, the majority of people will need some sort of long-term care.
Yeah. The statistic is that 70% of people who hit the age of 65 will need long-term care. And even crazier, of a couple that hits the age of 65, there is a 80% chance that one of them will live past 90. So it's about long-term care, but it's also about making sure that you don't outlive your money.
Yeah, because that's the big thing. People, I think, don't really realize that their insurance policies, their Medicare policies, those sorts of things are not safeguards for long-term care
That's right.
payments.
Unfortunately, unless you have a long-term care policy, or and what we see more frequently these days are different types of insurance policies that have long-term care benefits associated with them. So examples of those may be long-term care annuities that, they give you a little bit of growth, but if you need long-term care, they give you a multiplier on the money that you put in an annuity. There are options with like traditional life insurance policies, but if you need long-term care before you pass away, you can use some of that death benefit early to pay for the care. So, there's a lot of new options out there, but policies that were purchased 10, 15 years ago generally don't have any of these types of benefits.
Okay. So walk me through what the Heirloom Journey is.
Yeah.
It's
So
not just a fancy name.
That's right.
There's some
So there's
strategic.
Yes, and there's two different components to it. I want to start with what we call the Heirloom Roadmap, and that's really for people who are planning ahead. So the Heirloom Roadmap is designed for someone who may be late 50s and I would say maybe the early to mid 70s. It depends on health, right? There are some 70-year-olds who are in phenomenal shape.
I see them at the gym.
Yep, exactly. And then you have some
Making me
70-year-olds.
look back.
Yes, unfortunately, sometimes. And then there are, people in their 70s who are unfortunately like in facilities and suffering cognitive decline and whatnot. So the ages aren't a true, I won't say it's the ultimate guide. It really depends kind of on a combination of personal circumstances, finances, and that sort of stuff. Ultimately, the roadmap is really designed around ensuring that we have protection from a legal perspective. That's kind of the foundation, putting up the walls around everything, right? I use the example of a garden. You want to put like a fence or wall around that garden to make sure that animals aren't coming in and eating stuff, or people aren't coming by and grabbing, peaches off the tree, so to speak. Making sure that stuff that you're protected from a legal perspective. Then we want to make sure that we don't outlive our money. And so there's a number of different tools that we use that are really focused on seniors and people who are at an age where if they lose some money, they can't get money back. And when I say that, I mean, that
They're not working.
Bingo, that's it. Yeah. So if you have somebody who's 75 years old and all of a sudden the market drops 20% because a new tariff was announced or something like this, well, they don't have the opportunity to make that back, earn that back. And if they're living on those retirement accounts, it depletes very quickly in a down market. So our goals, and it is not, I want to be very clear, people always assume, oh, it's annuities. An annuity can be a piece, but oftentimes that's not the focus of what we're doing. There are really unique things out there that we have where, an example that we've used recently, it has a return of principal. So the money you put in is guaranteed to come back, but you can get, on average, we see our clients getting 7% per year with no risk to their principal, which is incredible for most
I
people.
wish you could get a savings account.
Right.
that
Yes,
return?
exactly. So, we also have some opportunities that, even if there's like a little bit of risk, we can see people pushing 12, 13% in terms of returns. Again, without that potential catastrophic risk that you could see in the market. Our approach to it when we deal with seniors is this, when you're investing, the money can go up, it could stay the same, or it could go down. Our goal is to take away that downside risk. Now, that means generally you're going to limit the upside risk. I mean, the upside potential, I'll say. But for most people, if they can get a solid 7% on their money per year with no risk to their principal, that's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, that feels better than taking a risk in a risky market.
Yeah, for sure. Especially when you don't have the opportunity to get it back.
Yeah. So, and you're uniquely positioned in your area of expertise to be able to offer this to our clients.
Right. So in addition to being an attorney, I also am a licensed financial advisor. I'm licensed to do insurance as well. And that's
Talk about an overachiever over here.
I just, the real reason that I did this 4 years ago was because I saw people coming in all the time with really terrible financial advice from their advisors. People coming in who were later in life and they were in some very risky, aggressive types of investments. And the analogy I've used for years is, when you're young, you go to a pediatrician. And then maybe you go to a PCP doc, you have specialists along the way, you go to a geriatrician. You have kind of different doctors for each stage of life who focus on kind of the unique challenges, health and otherwise, that you experience at those each stages. For some reason, we don't do that with financial advisors. We think this guy was great when I was 20, he's going to be great when I'm 80. That very well, and might not be, and very often isn't the case. So our focus is really just on seniors. That's our unique focus. And when the market goes up 20%, a lot of our clients aren't going to see a 20% increase in their portfolio. But when the market drops 20%, they're not going to see any decrease. And that's kind of the benefit that we focus on for them. And then the last piece of that heirloom roadmap is that long-term care component like we talked about. So making sure that there is money available that's generally used to keep people at home. So I think every single person, if you need long-term care, you'd rather have it at home. Yeah. Nobody wants to go to a facility. There are some very nice assisted livings out there, places where I walk in, I'm like, geez, this is nicer than the Ritz. How do I get a room here?
You pay for it.
That's right. It's more expensive than the Ritz.
Mm-hmm.
So,
you wish you could get
yes,
this.
Yes, exactly. So, ultimately, it could be used to pay for that. It could be used to be paid for in-home. And most of our clients really want to use that in-home.
Okay. So when you talk about the first step of protecting what you have, what does that step actually look like for somebody who is brand new to this and doesn't have any plans in place? Is that a trust? Is that fortress that we talk about here?
Oftentimes it is our fortress trust. It's a type of trust. You can think of it like a lockbox. You put your stuff in there. You think of it maybe like a safety deposit box at the bank.
Okay.
When you have a safety deposit box at the bank, you have a key, and that whoever the teller is of the day has the other key. And you guys go in together, you open it up, and you take your stuff out. Sort of works similarly, except instead of having some faceless bank employee, you have somebody you know and trust. It could be a child, niece, nephew, friend, sibling, parent, that then has the ability to work with you to get what's in there. And I always tell people, like a safety deposit box, you don't put everything you own in that. You put the stuff that you want to make sure is absolutely protected. Oftentimes we're putting people's homes. We're putting, maybe a large brokerage or savings account in there.
And how does a trust protect those things?
Our Fortress Trust is very different. So, there are lots of different types of trusts out there. The Fortress is really designed to protect those things both from potential long-term care expenses, lawsuits, medical bills, but even from things like exploitation. Unfortunately, we're seeing more and more of that. I read a statistic that said $36 billion were lost last year in scams and fraud. It just from Americans. And obviously here in Florida, a large portion of those scams are targeted towards seniors because we have such an aging population.
Absolutely. And we hear that from clients. Children of clients will call in and say, mom had a good savings account.
Yeah.
And it was depleted because a neighbor took advantage of her, or someone who came into the home under the guise of being a caregiver and took her credit card information.
I've lived that. Yeah. That happened to my grandparents. They both had dementia, but they were able to kind of make it together. And a neighbor came over and asked for groceries, and he wrote him a check for $150. Came over the next day, wrote him another check, and the next day, days, weeks, months after, this guy, they wrote tens of thousands of dollars away to this guy voluntarily.
Yeah.
It wasn't even like a scam. He just came over and asked for money, and they gave it to him.
But it is a scam when you're
Yeah,
taking
well,
advantage
yeah,
of
of
somebody
course,
in
of course.
cognitive decline,
Yeah,
something like that, and you're doing it in small increments so that it's less noticeable to families,
yeah.
right?
It took my parents months to figure it out.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate that we see that in our industry. So we have things protected by the fortress.
Mhm.
What does that mean for my access to those things, like the safety deposit box?
Yeah.
How do I access the money that's in a trust like that?
Sure. So that's why I said you have someone you trust who has the key. That could be, like I say, a child or someone else. You have indirect access through them. So you say, hey, take some of that out and give it to me, and they'll do that. Now, there's kind of a process to it. It's not overly difficult, but it just has to be followed. And we obviously give all the um, guidance and oversight to make sure that that happens appropriately. But, that's why we also say don't put everything in there. If you want to buy a new car, go on a cruise, do it. You shouldn't have to go ask someone for money. But there should be some stuff. Think of it like the example I've used before is you have a savings account and a checking account. Checking account's what you use whenever you want. Savings account you may pull off of as your checking account gets lower. That's kind of how the fortress works with our clients. They have that savings account that's there, that's protected from everything that they can draw off of if there's what they have over here gets spent down.
Okay. So then the money or liquid assets that are in that savings account, the trust, is that what's being used in the second step of the heirloom roadmap to sort of invest and make this
Certainly can be.
purchases for financial gain?
Yeah, definitely. So, oftentimes our clients will have brokerage accounts, investment accounts, things like that that go into the fortress, and then we'll invest and grow those in that fortress. So we've kind of built the fence around it, so to speak, and now we're growing the garden. So, where we've protected it from all the outsiders, now we want to make it grow. We want to see, produce fruit, bear fruit, so to speak. So
Yeah.
that's what the focus is. And yeah, sometimes some of those assets also have the long-term care components associated with them. Now, candidly, retirement accounts generally don't go in. Just the way they're treated from a tax perspective, the IRS will hit you with taxes on the full amount if you move it into that type of trust. So for just about every person, that's a horrible idea. We do oftentimes do investment strategies over there, though, for those assets that do stay out to continue to ensure that they're growing and not at risk.
Okay. So can you talk a little bit about some of the products that we do have to offer clients as far as making their money grow in the garden, so to speak?
Yeah. So, there are the first, I guess, topic I'd like to focus on would be the what we call like structured contracts. So these are things that are very unique. They're probably not familiar to most people. They're the type of things I talked about with the guaranteed return of principal and the potential for that 7-8% growth per year. Explaining how they work is pretty complicated. I need a graph to kind of show you how they work. They're not complicated products, but it's difficult to describe it without seeing it, if that makes sense. So that's something that we love using with seniors because there is that protection. There's another type of investment vehicle that we have that's really neat where if it provides you, I guess I'll say, participation in the market. And if the market drops, like say 2 days in a row by X%, it immediately all goes to cash. So it protects against those really steep downturns in the market. As things start to go bad, it just liquidates automatically. Yeah.
Okay.
And then it has the same sort of mechanism as things start to go up, then it invests back in immediately. So, you're never going to, in this case, you won't sell at the top and buy at the bottom, but you will protect from those big dips that happen. And ensuring that you're in a cash position when things aren't going well, and as things start to turn around and recover, then you're back invested in the market.
Okay.
So those are just a couple examples.
So obviously, we would love for everybody watching and listening, joining us monthly on YouTube and Spotify to come to our firm with some questions that they have about this type of process. But if somebody is already established with a financial advisor, with somebody that maybe their family has used for years, what sort of advice can you give them to make sure that they are thinking more long term for the aging population? How can we get those conversations going with the people they're already established with to make them start thinking a little more like you?
Yeah, yeah, and candidly, I think a good first step is just to talk about the legal piece, the Fortress Trust as an example, and just making sure that you and your things are protected from a legal perspective. Once we're working on that, then there's an opportunity to have a conversation around, hey, what have you done for long-term care? What are you planning to make sure that, as scams and fraudsters get more sophisticated, you're protected against that stuff. With the rise of AI, we're seeing some really scary, I'll say very complex and complicated scams that are starting to come out. Very recent one that we're seeing is if somebody knows who like a relative is of yours, they've been able to clone their voice using AI and then be able to say, "Hey, I need you to wire money because I was arrested wrongfully. I need to make bail, whatever." And all of a sudden, you're sending money to this person who sounds like your loved one.
Yeah.
They're even using AI versions on
Video calls.
Yeah, yeah,
To
exactly.
trick people. So
It's a very scary time to be alive from that perspective. So, there are a lot of risks out there, and I think it's just conversations to have. Everybody wants to put their head in the sand. Like, it's not going to happen to me. I don't have to worry about that. And the statistics show that it isn't true, that it is something you need to worry about. And if you're not planning for this, I mean, you're basically planning to fail, right? If you know that there's a 3 out of 4% chance you're going to use long-term care and you don't plan for it, that's crazy. If you knew there was a 3 out of 4% chance your house would burn down, would you buy insurance? Yeah, nobody's nuts. And there's it's like a less than 1/2 of 1% chance that your house is ever going to catch fire.
yeah.
But everybody has homeowners insurance.
Yeah.
Even if your mortgage didn't make you do it, which of course they do, you'd still have homeowners insurance because you're not crazy.
Unfortunately, here in Florida.
Right. And yet,
Requirements.
yeah, right. Exactly. And yet, on the flip side of things, 70% chance that you're going to need long-term care and people do nothing for it. I recently ran across a statistic that said that, the average amount of money spent in a long-term nursing facility is, for when anybody starts to use it, $194,000 before that person passes away. There's a 70% chance of that. Nobody's doing anything about it.
Yeah. And so with that
Number in mind. What if somebody has less than that saved up? I mean, who is the heirloom journey for?
Yep.
Is it for somebody who has less than that amount of money, or is there a target where you say, okay, if you have this much, you should be investing it in this way to make sure that it's stable and grows steadily?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think generally the answer, and it seems kind of counterintuitive, but yeah, I mean, if somebody has less than, let's say, $194,000, that's all the more reason to try to protect what you do have. Because I think most people, if faced with the option to leave everything they have to a nursing home or leave it to their kids, they're probably going to want to leave it to their kids.
Depends.
It does depend, sure. So I said most. I know that there are exceptions, definitely.
No, I would say the vast majority would
Yeah.
want that for their kids. I
Yeah.
know we do.
Yeah, sure. I know personally, I will leave it to my daughters. So, I think that's if you do have less, it's all the more reason to come have these conversations. If you're getting into the millions of dollars, I think, yes, absolutely, it's still worth having the conversations. As you get to 8 figures and beyond, realistically, you are probably doing a very different type of planning. You have the ability to finance long-term care for a very long time.
You're
and
gonna
still leave-
retire in space.
Yes, I mean, you can still leave to your kids and still pay for long-term care for you and a spouse for 10 years and it not be an issue. Obviously, in those situations, you want to make sure that your assets are growing, that you're doing a good job, you're being prudent with it. But at the same time, I don't think the level of urgency or the level of maybe risk of losing everything is there for those people. So, I mean, I'd say probably, $5 to $6 million, yeah, and up from there. Probably not looking at the heirloom around the long-term care so much, but the other pieces of it still may be very attractive. Asset protection is huge. If you have that much money, you're going to be a target for lawsuits. And God forbid someone gets a hold of you with a scam.
Yeah.
What to lose.
Yeah, absolutely. So how would somebody start the journey?
Yeah,
I mean,
start that
how
heirloom
how do they get into the heirloom business, so to speak?
Because this offering is very unique, there's no one else doing it. I think the first step is really just reaching out to us and having a conversation. I'm happy to sit down with people and just educate them on the different options that there are and kind of come up with a plan that's unique to their circumstances. There are a lot of different opportunities out there, and having something that works together is, I think, a very important piece of the puzzle.
And I think
This is not a one size fits all
Correct.
journey for anybody.
That's true.
Yeah. and their accounts are all going to look different coming in compared to what we can.
Oh, of course, absolutely, yeah. And that's one unique thing I'll say about our firm. I think is that we don't cookie cutter anything. If we're putting together trusts, the last 10 trusts all look different. If we're doing Medicaid planning for someone, the strategies are all very different. We work on it not what works, but what's going to be best for you. That's the focus of our firm is how do we custom tailor everything we do to plan to your circumstances that will put you in the best situation.
And just
Because you mentioned the Medicaid planning side of this, if somebody goes through the heirloom process, could they still qualify for Medicaid in the future?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, where I talk about having the long-term care money available for the home care, that's really the focus there, keeping people in the home without having to pay out of pocket for it. If, God forbid, you have to go to a nursing home, that's so astronomically expensive that then I think it does make sense to look to Medicaid to pay that. Fortunately, the other planning that we've done will get people eligible.
Appreciate your time as always, and we appreciate you tuning in to another episode. If you have questions for us, you can leave them in the comments section on Spotify and on YouTube. We'll take a look and you might see the answer coming up on a future episode. Thanks for watching.